The air is thick with smoke and ash. A trail of dead pirates, soldiers, minotaur, and cyclops lay in Xena's wake, but she's still not finished. She is both hunter and prey, and just as she and Gabrielle are about to fight their way to freedom, the Amazons corner Xena, trapping her in spinning doom while they beat her to death with sticks. So I never had a PS1 as a kid. I wasn't deprived or anything. I had an SNES and eventually an N64. But there was a very solid canon of New Millennium video games that I just missed. I did get the chance to play a little of the OG Tomb Raider at my friend Brenda's house though, and what I played was cool as shit. I also have a nice little Xena collection, but by no means a complete one. And hot take, I don't want a complete one. Something you learn quickly if you're into any of the nerd spaces is that stuff from the 90s is not that special generally. Nerd culture was bumpin', and so anything that might be considered a collectible was mass-produced to hell and back. Some of it was really cool. To this day, I still have my plastic chakram and my Xena, Gabrielle, and Callisto Barbies that have seen 20-something years of well-loved action. If I see something even vaguely chakram-shaped at a comic shop or the flea market, I am all over it. But no matter how many times I see this action figure in the wild, I just have zero interest in taking her home with me. It looks worse in person, I promise you. She looks like a reject Action League Now character. And I know that Toy Biz, the same company, was absolutely capable of doing better. And look, I don't need photorealism. My dad still says that my Callisto doll looks like Mr. Ed. But not even that harsh of a read can change my love for her. Talisman of Fate on the 64 was a fine enough addition to my little collection. I spent so many hours of my youth playing that game, and I felt similar then to how I do now. It's a super solid little combat game, wearing a nicely constructed Xena costume. What I did and do always appreciate about it was the care that went into each character's specials. They didn't just slap Xena skins on discount Mortal Kombat characters. There is some real thought in the movesets, and I appreciate that. But that's basically it. I remember there being a story about the Talisman of Fate, but mostly I remember Callisto's special move where she summons pillars of fire from the ground and how to spam Lao Ma's hairpins. So with all of that in mind, I was actually kind of afraid to try out the PS1 Xena game. I hold no nostalgia for the PS1 to cushion the blow in case it was closer to Atari's ET than it was to the Knights of the Old Republic on that licensed game front. But I was also super curious. So when my wife got me a PS1 and a copy of the game for Christmas, I was on board, hyped, and just a little wary, because on top of everything else, let's be real, jumping even just a few generations back when you've been putting in the hours on modern games, read Baldur's Gate 3 and Tears of the Kingdom, it can be super disorienting. I have unlearned the finer points of take controls in favor of engineering. How else do you expect me to hold this man sign up? And man, that change in controls got me for a long time. An upsetting amount of my playback footage is me swinging around in circles, walking off of cliffs, and generally making myself motion sick. Eventually, I mastered the fine art of sniping people with my chakram from a distance, but that was after I had to come to peace with the chakram's insanely sensitive inverted control. I still struggle with Arkham's remote battering for the exact same reasons, so apparently this game was ahead of its time, but I kept doing it. No matter how much that hypersensitive, slow-swinging camera makes me want to scream, I kept reloading those levels and fighting those Amazons like it was my dream job. Oh yeah, Xena fights the Amazons. Not all of them, mind you. The game is fully aware that Gabrielle is an Amazon queen. It's a pivotal plot point. Instead, because the game is determined to take us on the very best Xena tour it can, it's gotta have a lot of Amazons in it. But also, all the development money felt like it went to the chakra mechanics. If we want to see Amazons, they've got to be bad guys. So boom, we've got rogue Amazons on this hack and slash wireframe. While there are some cutscenes to the game, most of the story unfolds via text dumps on the chapter loading screens. Now, it's not the most cinematic form of storytelling, but I was also suspecting my own ignorance. Maybe these sparse backgrounds and wildly slow swinging camera were normal for the era. I have no idea. I read a few contemporary reviews and the results are inconclusive. Some of them share my frustrations. Others are picking up on entirely different issues that didn't even register to me. Instead, I saw varying levels of Xena nerd and video game nerd overlapping in a sea of opinion soup that made me feel like a time traveler. But I do have an original PlayStation now, and the intention to play more games on it. So I'll bookmark this thought and let you know if Xena Warrior Princess's quirky controls were normal or not once I've gotten a better library of data. Do me a favor and recommend your favorite PS1 game in the comments. Thank you. What I do know is that just like the Talisman of Fate, there was so much care given to the show, its world, and best of all, its tone in this game. Quick, what is the single most identifying aspect about Xena for you? Is it her outfit? Is it her battle cry? Her chakram? All of those are super present here, recreated with a surprising amount of care. My wife and I keep going back and forth on if the battle cries are lifted straight from the show. There are several of them that sound very accurate, like suspiciously so. And no tea, no shade, but the voice actresses of the game don't really sound like Lucy Lawless and Renee O'Connor at all. I would be genuinely stunned and awed if Tara Allen nailed this battle cry so hard, but if that is the case and it isn't just lifted audio, then I lift my hat to the actress who killed it. The music is not Joe LaDuca's outside of the menu, but it's a pretty decent sound alike. And it's the little audio touches that really get me. The whoosh whenever you're using your chakram, and the grunts and the banter of the faceless hordes of pirates and soldiers. Speaking of the chakram, it really is the star of the show here. It's a mechanic that's really fleshed out and levels regularly set you up to have to use it. On most enemies, it's a one-hit knockout, which is great. But there are a lot of the little bastards around and they tend to gang up and swarm you. If there's unit slotting happening here, I didn't feel it. I felt the pain of having a horde of Amazons circle around me and beat me to death with sticks. Hence why I went back to the training level and worked on getting good with the chakram at a distance, because that was the only way I was making it through some of these platform levels. I saw some gameplay videos of others running past the skeletons in Hades, but that never really worked for me. I would be lining up my jump, waiting for the camera to stop swinging, and then a skeleton would shamble over and push me into the lava. They also hit surprisingly hard and take multiple chakram hits to die. So I learned to lean on my Halo camping days and pick off the enemies of an area so that I could give myself space to platform past this camera. And oh my god, can you tell how I feel about this camera? It's not as horrible if you turn off analog, but it is still my biggest frustration with this game by far. Most of the game is challenging, but satisfying. Even tearing through the same village several times to kill the pirates, but not their hostages, can be fun. Figuring out how to get a swarm of bees to chase you so that they can terrorize a boss is great, even when the bees are stinging you as well. But you know what sucks the fun out of that? When you make it through an entire level of archers pelting you while you platform, kite a colony of bees over to the boss, and while you're watching the boss go, oh, down like it's my girl, Xena slips off the cliff because the camera is still swinging and I can't tell where the hell the edge of the world is. And the only way to get Xena to actually stop running when you tell her to is to just have her walk through the whole thing like a horror movie shade. Which looks super cool when you're fighting melee opponents, but just makes you a pincushion against archers and boomerangs. It's also a shame because Xena does way cooler jumps when she's running. The movesets are really impressive and comprehensive. I am very much guilty of spamming this tornado swing thing to get a little breathing room. And the way Xena's got different somersaults for speed and height, I'm genuinely impressed. I was expecting a knockoff Lara Croft with gold armored boob cones. Instead, I legitimately got Xena. And the character designs, all things technology and style considered, is spot on. True to the show, the soldiers and pirates are wearing mix and match armor straight out of the costume closets, but then the Amazons are here in all their leather loincloth and giant bird head glory, and by the end, we have to take care of some guys in fetish suits. Gabrielle looks great, and when she's with you, it's awesome because she does a pretty solid job of protecting and defending herself, except from kidnappers. A huge amount of this game is spent rescuing Gabrielle from kidnappers. But that's not a slight on Gabrielle. She's no damsel in distress, she's no Ashley. Like I mentioned, she fights like a champ in the levels that she's in, But she's actually getting kidnapped constantly because she's a badass, even if we just don't get to see much or any of that in the game itself. See, initially, Xena and Gabrielle do the typical split up where they're gonna meet up again later after Xena deals with her friend's village being raided by pirates, you know. But we're too late. Their raid has killed Xena's old friend Cyrus, and now she has a score to settle. So after defeating Pirate King Pactolus, by learning how to nut kick, it's great, I decided I would spend the next level nut kicking everyone to death. He spills the beans that Gabrielle has been kidnapped for the first time and taken to the Isle of Kronos. This was all a distraction. So Xena commandeers a ship via tech screen. That could have been a fun level, but alas. So that we can go take back Gabrielle from King Valerian. But oh damn, we're greeted with a cyclops throwing giant-ass boulders. We gotta zig, we gotta zag to avoid those landslides, but zigga-zigga. Xena pulls her signature move of blinding a cyclops before running up and stomping his hand off that ledge like Xena's the Undertaker and the cyclops is Shawn Michaels. But that's not all. King Valerian also knows that Xena will obviously be coming for Gabrielle. So he's put out a bounty on Xena to all of his thuggish soldiers, and Xena has to work her way through a maze of them to get to the castle. It's a multi-level trudge of archers and soldiers and catapults and bees. When we make it to King Valerian, after killing all of his bodyguards in front of him, he then tells us that Gabrielle has actually been taken to be used as a sacrifice that will bring about the New World Order. Before, bam! Surprise! King Valerian is a minotaur. Now this is my warning for arachnophobes. While chasing the minotaur through the labyrinth, it is Spider City. These bad boys are popping out everywhere, and just like everything else in this game, they hit harder than you would expect them to. And I don't have arachnophobia. I have zero issues with spiders. But I do know that there are certain movements and stuff that can be more triggering than others in people who do deal with arachnophobia. And even I was a little ew at the way they skitter. And hearing Gabrielle regularly scream, "Help me, Xena!" didn't help. I included a little clip here, not to torture you, but instead to give you a taste test to see if it'll be a problem or not. Look away from the screen in 3, 2, 1. Okay, you can look again. Side note, if you do end up playing the game, there is a secret room in this level and it is adorkable. So after we defeat the Minotaur and retrieve Gabrielle, who fills Xena in on an interesting piece of information. See, she heard Valerian mention some nearby Amazons, and as Amazon Queen, Gabrielle and Xena go to investigate. Unfortunately, this is a renegade band of Amazons led by a renegade queen, Narcissus, and they want nothing more than Gabrielle's blood. Despite fighting together and annihilating this village right as we're about to escape, they still grab Gabrielle and lock Xena inside the Lost Temple alone. See what I mean? There is a legit plot happening here with multiple villains and goals and a mystery, but it mostly plays out as Xena and Gabrielle fight bad guys. Gabrielle gets kidnapped. Xena saves her. They fight their way out. Repeated. But I guess that is the definition of a gameplay loop, isn't it? So Xena's gotta find and face Evil Queen Narcissus on her own. And we find out from Narcissus that the ritual they want to take part in, that will create that new world order, is a plan conceived by the angry goddess Calibrax. She wants to take revenge on the other gods by making a world where she is the supreme god, and that ritual requires the sacrifice of an Amazon queen to work. Narcissus wasn't exactly volunteering as tribute, so that's why they hatched the plan to sacrifice Gabrielle. But of course, the thing about Gabrielle in particular is that she comes with a badass god-fighting warrior wife, and they've got to keep Xena out of the way somehow. So Catrabrax rips open the earth to send Xena down to Tartarus. Hades has no skin in this game, so when Xena fights her way to him and asks him to send her back topside, he does with no fuss. Except for the skeleton fighters, a shit ton of platforming over lava, oh yeah, and the fucking dragon that it took to get there in the first place. This area was the bane of my existence. It is so easy to just barely slide off the side of a platform and lose massive chunks of Xena's health bar to lava. Meanwhile, it feels like every healing potion is surrounded by at least 2 skeletons, all of which take way more damage than the living enemies. So by the time you've finally gotten the potion and gotten past the skeletons hiding by it, you're right back to the same level of hurt you started in. These levels were tedious for me for that reason. The amount of times I died right at the very end because of some stupid skeleton or bat chipping away at me while I shove a stone golem into the lava, rage-inducing. I almost didn't make it out of Tartarus. It was like playing the game Hades, but without the satisfaction of an unwinding story on every restart. Instead, I developed a muscle memory for chakram sniping the same 4 guys over and over at the beginning of the level. Also, fuck those wraiths. But anyways, Hades does Xena a solid by sending her back to the village of Tyrna, so she can find the lyre of Orpheus and use that against Calibrax. Unfortunately, Xena and Hades are not the only ones who know about the lyre. Calibrax has already sent druid soldiers to Tyrna to steal the lyre and hold the seer of the village captive. Really all of the village. They're all locked inside of their homes. Once Xena frees the seer, he directs her to a nearby druid, taking Xena to a secret temple, where of course a fight ensues. But it's a very cool fight, puzzle, double feature. Xena is an exceptional hammer in a world of nails. It's only natural. For saving the village, the seer gives Xena the lyre of Orpheus as a reward. And with that, Xena is off through the mountains on the next leg of this journey. Xena and death. An intermission. I really appreciate that in the Xena universe, a land in turmoil and full of violence, the death is not treated as implicitly evil. It's treated as a part of the natural order. It's as much a part of life as anything and everything else. Roll with me here. Death is still the ultimate cost, and taking another human life is given exceptional weight in this universe. See almost everything with Gabrielle's entire character arc across the series. Her blood innocence and relationship with violence is a constant and unavoidable presence in the show. To kill is unnatural, but so is avoiding death. Right at season 1, Death in Chains, we have a narrative built on the understanding that death is natural, and to subvert death is a cruelty upon our basic humanity. Celesta, the goddess of death, is a compassionate and gentle creature, ushering people out of the turmoil of these war-torn lands and into peace. The king who chains her up is acting out of fear, selfishness, and greed. Hades, god of the underworld, in the game and the show, is chill. He's not an antagonist, but he's also not a part of the gang like Ares or Aphrodite are. Most of the characters who try to or become immortal throughout the show are painted as selfish and unnatural creatures. The good guys are not out there getting their hands on ambrosia or golden apples to become gods. Xena gets just enough of it to come back to life and save the day against the reprobates who started this whole thing. And even that is temporary. Xena's still got a few more deaths ahead of her. Deaths that she faces valiantly, as knowing consequences of her own deliberate actions. Xena and Gabrielle are our 2 semi-immortals who get passes because they're ready to accept their own deaths each time they come. Tangent on a tangent, I feel like there's something to the fact that each time Gabrielle dies, she's saved by Ares. I'm not sure if it's the god of war saving this peaceful cinnamon roll that's so interesting to me, or if it's mostly because of their shared love for Xena. I'm not sure. I haven't finished baking that thought yet. If you got opinions or ideas on it, I would love to hear them. Spoiler, and an apology for Kristen. I am so sorry again about spoiling this for you. Xena's final death comes with the understanding that this absolutely is her final death. She must die and stay dead for Xena to finally be able to forgive herself and accept that redemption that she's been denying herself all series. Also to literally save thousands of souls. You can tell that the writers were trying so hard to make us not hate them for killing Xena. It didn't work. A Friend in Need is one of the most despised episodes in the fandom. I don't actually feel that strongly about it though. And I like Kemi as a character and an ex-girlfriend. But I also think that Married with Fish Sticks is a clever and fun Xena Light episode, so maybe you can't trust my taste. Or maybe I'm exactly the intended audience, who knows? So beyond Xena's awesome moveset, and the surprising amount of detail in the enemy models, there are also some cool power-ups. Pretty regularly, you find stuff like the Hand of Zeus, which makes lightning shoot from your sword and increases the damage. You've got your standard sword and shield upgrades. And you also have this chakram down here at the bottom that occasionally fills up, and when you do, Xena flashes and goes invincible. I kid you not, it took me like 3/4 of the game to finally figure out what was happening with this particular chakram. See, I had gotten through most of the game noticing that it seemed to go up when I got a one-hit chakram KO, so that just further validated my chakram sniping strategy. But then I get to the Tartarus levels where I can no longer one-hit any of my enemies and it stopped filling, which further confirmed my idea. But then I get back to sniping and it's still not filling up. What is this bar? I was so sure I knew what it was. It's a karma gauge. Xena gets credit for knocking out her enemies instead of killing them. And considering how often I was sniping enemies in the knee or the nuts to fill that meter, that makes sense. But I also had zero qualms about killing on my playthrough. Anything I could kite to a ledge for an easy kick into death, bam, goodbye, bitch. And the levels they're not like the most mind-bending originals. In any given section, Xena shows up and does some basic hack and slash through the area to get to know the enemies and their movesets. You do a combo platform/enemy fight, and she solves a platform/combat puzzle that requires you to use your chakram or a niche mechanic you've been ignoring this far. Then Ares talks at us like he thinks he's Yoda, and we move on to the next region to save Gabrielle. The game's writing isn't exactly reinventing the wheel here. Sometimes it feels like a bare bones outline of an episode. Like everyone's talking in their notes and placeholder dialogue instead of actually getting any conversations crafted. It's not as much of a pain point as that camera, but it is still there. To the point that when a cutscene happens, I actually get a little bit disappointed. I don't want to sit through this. I want to go back to playing as Xena, because that's what this game nails. Thankfully, the cutscenes are very brief, but that's not to say that we're missing all of the best points of the show's writing. The humor is everywhere if you only look. By the end of the game, it's really cool, because this time you're running a gauntlet of fucking Gorgons and Dryads. And I feel like I should really have something about Xena getting hard here, but alas, I have only acknowledgement. Okay, so we've got the liar, we've got the plot, aka we've got Gabrielle's whereabouts. It is finally time to face Calibrax once and for all. Just gotta fight some ogres, take care of a chime puzzle, boop boop. Play some music, and we're finally back to our lady, our love, our Gabrielle. And because we're Xena, we make it just in time before Gabrielle would have been sacrificed. She's tied to an altar, and I mean, it is an iconic shot for a reason. Side note, I know that I shouldn't show the internet weakness, but being tied to an altar by snakes on my wrists? Yeah, just gut me, please. Quickly, that shit is absolute nightmare fuel. Anyways, remember that thing I said about hammers and nails earlier? It's hammer time. First, we fuck up these two guards in bondage suits. Then, we slice and dice Calibrax like sashimi. It is easy. Too easy. Calibrax is a multi-phase boss, baby. She's also a Taurus that breathes lightning. Not gonna lie, that's pretty sick. I mean, up until this point, I was lamenting that it wasn't an established villain in canon like Callisto or Velasca. Then I saw that we're taking advantage of the video game format to fight lightning-breathing Tauruses, and now I understand that creative vision. So in the battle that ensues, we finally defeat Calibrax by collapsing the entire temple on top of her. When Xena does something, she doesn't do that shit by half. Like embracing Gabrielle to emotional Titanic-esque bagpipe music. Or... I don't know if this is better or worse for my phobia. Is this just like further nightmare fuel that Xena bites into venomous snakes raw? What about the bones? Or is this a power move? Is this big dick energy or madness inflicted by the Furies? I don't know. I don't feel like a warlord after that last scene. God, Xena, why? Why? I feel like it's supposed to be a reference to eels, but like, oh. Well, I'm certainly not forgetting this game anytime soon. It is by no means a masterpiece, but it is a really good entry into the franchise that I am proud to have in my collection. It's much higher on the fandom quality scale than Action Link Xena. And while it might not have felt like one of Xena's most memorable or philosophical adventures, it was a game where I, the player, got to feel like Xena. I made easy work of doing badass somersaults over crazy pits. I sliced down my enemies with my sword. I did crazy tornado kicks with my powerful legs. And I couldn't do any of it without my essential, trusty chakram. And as always, it's to save the world and to save Gabrielle. I think that this is the closest any game has ever brought me to feeling like Xena. So, hey everybody! So, I just wanted to say, these last 6 months have been wild. I've gone from lurking like a creeper online to sharing overly personal video essays that people actually watch, and it's great. As of recording, I have 70 subscribers, and I am so thankful to have this audience. It is awesome getting to throw my thoughts into the ether and find other people who think they're interesting too. I know this video is a little different than what I've been doing. There are a couple of reasons for that. A, I am experimenting and finding myself as a creator. And B, I'm traveling a lot for work this month, and I thought I'd try simplifying the process a bit as an act of self-love. Let me know what you think about the format in general in the comments. It is exceptionally cool to have an audience at all, and I really do want to hear your thoughts. Take care of yourselves out there, okay? Bye!